Jonah plunged into the dark and roiling sea, knowing that he was mere moments from death. He found that, to his amazement, while he knew this to be true, a part of him simply would not believe it. His arms and legs seemed to have a will of their own as he struggled to get back to the surface. Holding his breath tightly, he wondered why he even bothered. Surely he was about to die. Hi, I'm Louis Marsh, Senior Pastor of River Church and your host for Tales from the Scrypt. Last week, we began looking at the story of the reluctant and running prophet Jonah. We stopped as the crew of the ship was tossing Jonah overboard. Jonah didn't know it then, but while he was going down, things would soon be looking up. But I guess at this point, you'd have to say that he really wasn't having a whale of a time. I'm sorry. Yeah, I said it. I'll own it. I know. Suddenly, he felt himself being pulled deeper into the water. Though he couldn't see what was happening, in the darkness he felt fear rippling across his heart, and his arms and legs moved even faster, but to no avail. Jonah felt, more than saw, something hard closing upon him. And then he felt a mighty blow to his head as he was sucked into some kind of a confined space. The pull on him only got stronger as he was squeezed into a tight and warm tunnel of some kind. Jonah raggedly held on to the last of his air, fighting the urge to scream as he felt his head slip into the pulsing tunnel. It convulsed and pushed him even deeper. For a second, he couldn't move at all, and then suddenly he was through. He found himself in a slightly larger place that was very warm and contained liquid that sloshed around and burned when it touched him. Although he couldn't see his hand in front of his face, there was only one conclusion to draw from all of this, as crazy as it seemed. He was inside some kind of sea creature, yet he was still alive. As he finally allowed himself to exhale and drew in the worst, most malodorous breath of his life, he smiled in spite of himself. Only God knew what was coming next, but at least for now, he was alive. Thus Jonah, the reluctant and running prophet, began a controversy that has lasted literally for thousands of years. Skeptics have, out of hand, rejected this story as fantasy or myth, and you have to admit that at the very least it sounds incredibly far-fetched, but then again, most miracles aren't they? Isn't that why they're called miracles in the first place? We don't have time to go into everything that's been said about this, of course, but I will point out that there are many stories, both from the ancient past and more recent times, of people being swallowed whole by sea creatures and living to tell the tale. However, the sources for these stories are either lost in antiquity or vague at best. No one has yet captured any of this on video, of course, not that that would convince very many people anyway in this age of AI. Clearly, some white sharks and whales are large enough to swallow a human being. Yes, I know, whales aren't fish, I know, but the Hebrew word that's used here indicates a sea creature. So, I'm going to go with that. Some have been cut open with an entire fish larger than a man inside of them. Perhaps the best candidate for this is the finback or fin whale. They can grow up to 88 feet long, and their stomachs have 4 to 6 compartments, easily large enough to fit a man. This type of whale has a reserve air chamber in its head, which appears with the dilation of the nasal cavities. Before swallowing a very large object, the finback whale pushes it through to this chamber. If it happens that something too large is found in the head of the whale, then it will swim to the nearest land, lie in the shallow water, and disgorge its burden. So, while you can't prove that any of this story is true, just remember you can't disprove it either. Based on what we know today, it seems to be highly improbable, but possible nonetheless. And remember what the book of Jonah, probably written by the prophet himself, says in Jonah 1:17, quote, "But the Lord provided a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights, unquote. If God could provide this fish, then God could certainly make a fish with a throat wide enough to swallow a man. Having created the universe, this really doesn't seem to be too big of a problem for him. The second point to notice about this is that Jonah was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Now, to the modern reader, that sounds like 72 hours, right? However, when you study how this term is used in the Old and New Testament, you find that it simply means some part of a 3-day period of time. So it could have been as short as 36 hours or so. However long it was, I'm sure for Jonah, it was plenty long enough. So let's get back to Jonah. Stuck inside this thing, whatever it was, he was in dire straits. He wasn't dead, but that's the sum total of good news that he possessed. He knew all this was his fault. He had tried to run from God, and this was the result. Alone, dejected, without any human hope. What did the running prophet do? Well, he did what almost anyone would do in that kind of situation. He ran again, but this time he ran to God. Jonah prayed. The second chapter of his book contains his prayer. I suspect that his original prayer might not have been quite as poetic as the one we read here in the book of Jonah, but it contains the heart and soul of the prayer, and I want you to look especially at how it ends. Jonah 2:8-9 says, "Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. But I, with the voice of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you what I have vowed. I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord." Or in other words, Jonah was saying, "Help! Get me out of here. I'll do whatever you want, Lord." Who wouldn't pray that prayer? And this brings me to a little-known old song called The Hornet Song. It was written by Paul Levin and Bob Finley. Here's the song's third verse and chorus. When Jonah was sent to the work of the Lord, the outlook was not very bright. He had never done such a hard thing before, so he backed and ran off from the fight. But God sent a big fish to swallow him up. The story I'm sure you all know. He did not compel him to go against his will, but he just made him willing to go. He does not compel us to go. No, he does not compel us to go. He does not compel us to go against our will, but he just makes us willing to go. At last, Jonah was willing to go, and God was willing to give him the second chance he needed, as he always is for each and every one of us. I hope you'll be with us for the next episode, where we're going to take a look at what happens to our reluctant and running prophet next. Till then, I'm Louis Marsh, Senior Pastor of River Church in Parker, Arizona. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could do this for me, it would be so awesome if you could just subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, give it a like. That's going to be a huge help to getting this video recommended by the YouTube logarithm so that other people can see it and other people can take part in this, and it won't cost you a thing. It only takes a second. So I hope you'll do that, and I hope to see you back here next week right here where we're going to have some more fun with Jonah, the running prophet. Till then, take care, God bless you, and I'll see you next time.